All right, so welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a story that's got it all. Family drama, a whole lot of corporate scheming, and a secret that, I'm not going to lie, could bring down an entire empire.
And it's even more fascinating because we're looking at Rwanda, specifically a Rwandan company.
Right. This has a really unique cultural and social context that you just don't see in, like, your typical business story.
You rarely do. You rarely do.
So the source material for this deep dive, it's a 2-part podcast series.
Okay.
It's called The Succession Showdown at UZIMA Group. And the secret he took to the grave.
Ooh, intriguing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
UZIMA is, well, for those who aren't familiar, it's a huge, huge beverage company in Rwanda, and their recent change in leadership has been, let's just say, a little bumpy.
A little bumpy, okay.
Yeah, a little bumpy.
So fill me in. What's bumpy about it?
Well, it starts off almost like a case study, like a textbook example of how not to handle a family business succession.
I've seen a few of those.
So you've got Munana, the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
He's 83 years old, and he's stepping down.
After how long?
Oh, decades.
Okay, wow.
Decades at the helm. So everyone expects his son, Munana Junior, to just slide right in, take over.
Makes sense. Seems straightforward.
Totally.
Classic family business.
You'd think, right?
Yeah.
Heir apparent.
Easy peasy.
But then, plot twist.
Oh, I love a good plot twist.
Instead of Junior, the board appoints Isaro, who's described as his half-sister.
Oh, wow. So it's not even a clear-cut, like, this is the son situation.
It's not.
There's already some, like, internal family stuff going on.
Right.
Got it.
And to be honest, the podcast doesn't go into a lot of detail about the family structure before this point.
Okay.
But, I mean, this decision sends shockwaves through the company.
Yeah, I bet.
You're not just dealing with, like, a dad retires, son takes over situation anymore.
Right? You got a power struggle.
Yeah.
Like, within the family.
Within the family, exactly.
That's juicy.
So this is where I start getting curious. Why Isaro?
Yeah, why her?
Was this, like, a strategic play by the board?
Uh-huh.
Or is there, like, a whole soap opera happening that we don't know about?
Right. Something deeper here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the podcast sorta, kinda, suggests a few things.
All right, lay it on me.
Number one, Isaro, she's painted as, like, this dynamic leader.
Okay.
You know, not afraid to shake things up.
So a bit of a change maker.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Maybe the board felt like UZIMA needed someone to, like, modernize, bring it into the future.
Makes sense, especially if they're trying to compete globally.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I'm also thinking, what about the gender dynamics at play?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Isaro's taking over in what's probably a pretty male-dominated industry.
Very likely. Very likely.
Do you think that factored into the board's decision? Or maybe even the public reaction?
That's a really good question. The podcast does touch on that, suggesting that Isaro might be judged differently, held to a different standard. Oh, absolutely.
Because she's a woman.
Like, she can't just be good. She has to be exceptional.
Exactly. To even be considered, like, equal to her male counterparts.
Oof. That adds a whole other level of, like, complexity to her leadership challenge.
Definitely.
It's not just about, knowing the business.
Right.
It's about smashing through these, like, deeply ingrained expectations.
Societal expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge hurdles.
And this is all before we get to the real shocker.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, there's more. It's like later in the podcast, it's like this twist that, I don't know, it kind of rewrites the whole story for you.
Okay, you're killing me. What is it?
Okay, so Munana Junior.
Yeah.
Not actually Munana Senior's biological son.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
So wait, he's not the heir apparent after all?
No.
Oh, man.
Talk about a wrench in the plan, right?
That's huge. That changes everything.
Everything. And the way the podcast presents it was like this deep, dark secret that Munana Senior confided in a friend before he died. Oh, wow.
And this friend, like, eventually decides to tell Junior the truth.
Oh, man. Can you imagine?
I can't even imagine.
Blindsided.
Completely blindsided. It's not just, like, losing out on the CEO job. It's his whole identity.
It's everything. His place in the family, in the company, everything.
Right. And it makes you wonder about Munana Senior's, like, motivations.
Yeah. What was he thinking?
Did he know this whole time?
Like, was he setting Junior up to fail?
I don't know.
Or is there even more to it?
Oh,
now I'm really hooked.
Right.
So what about Isaro? Does she know about the secret?
And how does this impact her now?
Right. That's a big one.
Exactly. That's where we're headed next.
Yeah.
The fallout from this secret. It's massive. It affects the company, the family, even Rwandan society as a whole.
Okay.
Okay, so huge bombshell dropped. Junior's parentage, total shocker.
Yeah.
What happens next? Does the company just fall apart?
It definitely throws everything into chaos, but it doesn't implode like you might think.
Really? How so?
Instead of like a public fight for control or whatever, you see these two totally different approaches to leadership emerge.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Both Junior and Isaro are in this crazy situation, but they react in completely different ways.
Okay, so how does Junior handle it all?
Basically, he goes off the grid.
Really?
Yeah. The podcast says he steps away from the company completely.
I mean, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
His whole world's just been flipped upside down.
Like, how could you even function at work after that?
Right, like, I need a serious break. You know?
Exactly. So you've got Junior dealing with this huge identity crisis, but then you have Isaro, and she goes in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
She doesn't back down at all.
Yeah.
Instead, she steps up.
What, like, takes charge?
Yeah, she leans in. The podcast says she's super strategic about the whole thing.
So does she try to control the narrative? Like a big PR campaign or something?
Yeah, she does. But it's not just damage control. It's more, thoughtful, I guess. She gives interviews. She makes public statements.
Okay.
But she doesn't get all defensive. Instead, she just straight up acknowledges how weird the whole situation is.
Huh.
And then she focuses on the future, on her vision for UZIMA. And she really emphasizes that she's committed to leading the company towards success.
Smart.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this is messy, but look, let's focus on what's important here. UZIMA's future.
You're right. And she doesn't just talk the talk. She actually starts making changes, implementing new initiatives.
Putting her words into action.
Exactly. And get this, the podcast even mentions that some of the people who were skeptical of her at first, they start to come around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're impressed. They like that she's decisive, that she has a clear direction for the company.
So it's like, while Junior's reeling from this family secret, Isaro's using it as a chance to solidify her position.
Right. And build her own legacy, like she's making her own path.
It really highlights just how different their leadership styles are.
It does. I mean, they're both in this crazy family drama, but their reactions are night and day.
That's true.
Makes you think, right? Like maybe their experiences within the family, maybe that shaped how they lead.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, Isaro, maybe she's always been on the outside a bit, So maybe she developed different skills, different ways of handling tough situations compared to Junior, who, was seemingly being groomed to take over, and then boom, it's all gone.
So they were prepared for leadership in totally different ways.
Exactly. And this whole situation, it's like a pressure cooker,
Yeah.
forcing them to use those skills in a very public way.
And let's not forget, this is all happening in Rwanda. There are all these cultural norms and expectations about family and inheritance and leadership.
Right. You can't separate that from the story. It adds another layer of complexity.
Totally. It's not just a corporate drama.
It's way more than that. It's about family. It's about Rwandan society. It's about how these things are all intertwined.
It makes this case study so much more fascinating than just like your typical business story.
It really does. And it makes you think about these bigger issues, identity, legacy, and how tough it can be to be a leader when your personal life and your professional life are colliding like this.
Okay, so with all this drama going on,
Yeah.
how does the public react? Do people take sides?
Oh, absolutely. The media goes crazy. Everyone's talking about it.
Really?
Yeah. News, social media, everyone. The podcast describes it as a national debate.
Wow.
People are debating the board's decision, questioning their motives, speculating about UZIMA's future. It's a whole thing.
So the whole country's basically caught up in this family's drama.
Pretty much.
Wow, what a pressure cooker for Isaro.
It really is. It shows that even in the business world, personal stuff can become very public very fast, especially when you're dealing with a company as big as UZIMA.
And with all that media attention, all that pressure, how does she even focus on running the company?
That's a great question. And that's what we're going to look at in the last part of our deep dive. It's where things get really interesting.
I mean, it's got to be tough for Isaro, right? Dealing with all this media stuff and trying to lead a company through, well, a huge transition. It's like she's on a tightrope.
It really is a high wire act for sure. And the podcast does a good job of, really highlighting those specific challenges. I mean, remember, this isn't just about the family secret coming out. She's also taking over this company that's probably, got its own history, its own traditions, probably even internal politics and power struggles we don't even know about.
Yeah, it's like she's walking into, I don't know, like a kingdom, but with all these hidden traps and like secret alliances and stuff.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder, did the board even know about this secret when they appointed her? Was this all like part of some plan? Did they set her up?
Ooh, that's a good question. And the podcast doesn't really give you a straight answer, but it definitely like hints at that possibility. Yeah. There are a few moments where you get the feeling that like maybe the board knew more about this family drama than they let on.
Which, I mean, that makes me think about the board's role in all this. I mean, they chose Isaro. They knew it would, like, shake things up. But why? Were they really looking for someone new, someone different, or is there something else going on?
Well, the podcast says they were impressed with her experience, with her plans for UZIMA. But they also kind of hint that maybe there were power struggles within the board itself.
Oh, so like different groups fighting for control?
Yeah, different factions maybe.
So it's like Isaro becomes this pawn in their game.
Right, exactly. And that makes her job even harder, even more, unstable.
Yeah.
Because now she has to prove herself to everyone, the public, the employees, and even like deal with these power struggles within the board.
It makes you realize that leadership, real leadership, it's never simple.
Yeah.
It's never just about making decisions. There's always stuff going on behind the scenes, always pressure, always, hidden agendas.
Absolutely. And in this case, all those pressures are like magnified, right? By the media, by this family secret. It's a real example of like crisis management and leadership under fire.
What's interesting is the podcast doesn't tell you if Isaro succeeds or fails.
Right.
It kind of leaves it open-ended.
Yeah.
Which actually, I think that makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, it does. It does. It makes you think about like what could happen to UZIMA.
Right.
Will she overcome all this baggage and make her own legacy? Or will it all be too much?
It's a question that I think anyone who's ever had to lead, especially in a family business, can relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you balance tradition and the need to change? How do you make the best choices for the company when you've also got these personal relationships to think about?
It's really tough. And this story shows us that leadership isn't just about, having the skills or the experience. It's also about like being tough, being able to adapt, and making hard decisions when everything's uncertain.
At the end of this deep dive, what really strikes me is that the UZIMA story, it's really a human story.
It is.
It's about ambition, betrayal, family, and the price of power.
It really is. And it shows that even in these big institutions like companies and boards, it's still people making decisions. Yeah. And those decisions have real consequences for real people.
So before we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that there's always more to the story than what you see at first. Whether it's, a business deal or a family argument, there are always things happening behind the scenes, things you might never fully understand.
It's a good reminder to, be curious, to ask questions, and to try to see things from different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also shows how important empathy is, especially when you're trying to make sense of these complicated human stories. It's easy to judge, but if you take the time to really understand people's experiences, their motivations, you'll get a much better understanding of the world.
This has been such a fascinating look at leadership and legacy and how messy things can get when you mix business and family. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great unpacking all of this with you.
And to our listeners, we'll leave you with this. What do you think will happen to UZIMA? Will Isaro succeed? Will the past catch up to them? Let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. And until next time, happy listening.